This is Matthew Kratter's Bitcoin University. Today I have some really good news to report. The fact that Bitcoin Knots usage on the network has now hit over 21%, which is definitely a memeable number. If we look at CoinDance here, we can see we're currently at 22.79% of the network. And the number of Knots nodes has been absolutely going vertical over the past 24 hours. It's unbelievable to see. As Chris points out here, now over 1 in 5 nodes is a Knode, or a Knots node, as you might say. If we look at Clark Moody's Bitcoin dashboard, we can see here that there are 8.66% of the network is running the new version of Knots, which was released in September, and then 13.85% is running Knots that was released, the older version that was released in March of this year. So if you add those together, we're definitely over 22, about 22.5% there. So that seems to check out. Any of these implementations here, any of these Core 28, Core 29, any of these implementations run using the default settings will not relay large op returns, which is really good news. Now it just remains to be seen how many core nodes end up upgrading to Core 30 when it's released in early October. The good news is that Knots node runners seem to be much more passionate about this issue and much more high agency than core node runners, many of whom seem to not even be paying attention to the debate or just reckless enough to want to turn their home computers into a CSAM relay service, which I talk about in this video, which I'll link to in the description notes below. In just a few months, we've really witnessed a miracle here, plebs dumping core for Knots, and lots of new plebs spinning up Bitcoin nodes for the first time in their lives, which is always good to see. And then in the process, choosing to run Knots, either because they understand the technical debate at a certain level and don't want to be relaying large, illegal, illicit images and helping them to get mined, or simply because core and their antics simply don't pass the smell test. I think this is true for many people, as Tomer points out here. Quote, why do the anti-filters people who claim it is pointless to run Knots make such a big deal about people doing something pointless if it is pointless? Why are the same people prepared to fight so hard for and shatter their reputations on expanding op return relay policy from 80 bytes to 100,000 bytes when they claim nobody will use it? It's such suspicious behavior. Of all the movements where people don't want other people doing stuff, it's never been that stuff. It's never because that stuff is seen by them to be pointless. Of all the movements where people are pushing for a change, it's never because they say the change will have no impact and be used by nobody. You don't have to be a paranoid Bitcoiner to feel that something is off here, and I completely agree. Chris has another way of stating it, quote, without speculation at all, but just by looking at the objective facts as they are, we can easily tell that the quote-unquote cure that Bitcoin Core proposes is 1,000 times worse than the quote-unquote disease that it purports to solve, which means we're forced to conclude that there's a much greater problem they haven't told us about, or there's a much greater payoff that they haven't told us about. And I made the comparison after seeing this tweet. I made the comparison with the COVIDians, as was true with Fauci, so with Bitcoin Core. When the quote-unquote cure is worse than the disease, you know you're probably getting screwed while someone else benefits. I wanted to finish with a note from George here. Bitcoin Core has become the quote-unquote elite, the 1%, the little clique that knows what's best for plebs. Marie Antoinette let them eat cake. Over the last 3 months, I've been told you don't know what you're talking about, you don't write code, you don't get a vote, we decide what to vote on. Bitcoin Core maintainers are either corrupt, compromised, stupid, or more likely a combination of all three. Run a node. If you want to learn how to run a Bitcoin Knots node, I'll put a link to all these free resources in the description notes below, and I'm not being paid or compensated in any way. You can run Bitcoin Knots just on a laptop or a desktop. What's even easier is to run it on your own personal server, which you could buy from Umbrel, you could buy from Start9, or you could build your own using a mini PC. So I'll put a link to all these in the description notes below so you can join and help us gain even more momentum. Watching this chart go vertical is a very, very hopeful sign. So I thank all of you who have switched from Core or who have spun up new Bitcoin Knots nodes. You really are becoming the Bitcoin network at this point. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.